Martial law in the USA. Does that mean tanks rolling everywhere in the streets and diving into dictatorship? Or rather, should you feel safe because the army is out there protecting you from the bad guys? If you want to know what martial law in the US would actually look like, it's best we take a look at its history. Martial law has been declared more than 68 times in the United States. It's been used to respond to wars, natural disasters, insurrections, riots, labour disputes, and other complicated conflicts in society. Generally, martial law means the replacement of civilian authority with military authority. Specifically, martial law was commonly associated with the suspension of habeas corpus, that is, the right of a detainee to claim unlawful detention and the right to a trial. In a nutshell, it means that law enforcement can operate without judiciary supervision. Deployment of troops is not necessarily equivalent to declaring martial law and vice versa. Also, martial law can have a set of implementations that range from the denial of habeas corpus to imposing a complete military administration. Martial law can also be local or national. Local martial law is declared in a certain region, state, or city. When the whole country is placed under military control, that's national martial law. A national level martial law can be imposed by either the US President or the US Congress. Now that the basic concepts are covered, let's explore some of the major instances of the use of martial law in the US. Local uses of martial law. New Orleans in 1815. The War of 1812 was a conflict between the United States and the British Empire. It lasted from 1812 to 1815. In the last year of the war, the city of New Orleans was in danger of being captured by the British forces. American General Andrew Jackson imposed martial law in the city to help keep the situation under control. The British were defeated in the Battle of New Orleans, but Jackson maintained martial law until peace was officially declared. Chicago in 1871. The Great Chicago Fire devastated the city in 1871. A big part of the city's resources was destroyed. 1/3 of its residents became homeless overnight. Authorities feared that the city would fall into chaos, looting and violence, so martial law was declared by Mayor Philip Sheridan. Chicago was put under military control. A mix of army troops, militia, police and volunteers patrolled the streets, guarded critical buildings and enforced the law. The Chicago relief effort was nationwide and donations flowed into the city. After 2 weeks, the troops were relieved and the martial law lifted. San Francisco in 1906. The San Francisco earthquake in 1906 had an estimated Richter magnitude of 7.9. This was the deadliest natural disaster in California's history. Over 3,000 people died. The shaking and the ensuing fires destroyed over 80% of the city. Martial law was declared to make full use of military troops. Soldiers patrolled the streets to discourage looting and guarded essential buildings. The army helped to feed, lodge, and provide clothing for the tens of thousands of displaced inhabitants of the city. They also confiscated dynamite that was used for the destruction of buildings in order to isolate areas on fire. Colorado in 1914. Coal miners in Colorado went on strike starting in the summer of 1913. The strike degenerated into violence. Brutal conflicts emerged between the miners and the strike breakers that even involved the use of machine guns at some point. Almost 200 deaths are estimated to have occurred during the strike. As clashes were spiralling out of control, the governor declared martial law. President Wilson sent federal troops that disarmed both sides. Members of the militia were either dismissed or arrested. West Virginia, 1920. A coal mine strike degenerated into violent conflicts when activists of the Socialist Party began supplying miners with weapons. Rifles and even machine guns were involved. Things escalated to a full-blown battle, known as the Battle of Blair Mountain. It's estimated that approximately 1 million rounds were fired. The US Army intervened. The declaration of martial law permitted arrests of rebel miners until the area was pacified. East Texas in 1931. Governor R. Sterling declared martial law following a dispute over the regulation of oil production between state government, oil producers, and federal courts. The oil exploitations were growing fast and out of control. The courts didn't manage to deal with the situation. 4 counties were placed under martial law for 6 months by Governor Sterling. Military troops were sent to shut down the oil and gas production facilities. No violent incidents occurred. Hawaii, from 1941 to 1944. The state of Hawaii has been put under martial law following the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. A military governor of Hawaii was appointed. It had executive, legislative, and judicial powers. Residents of Japanese ethnicity were placed under especially intense scrutiny. Other individuals that were deemed potentially dangerous were subjected to investigations, arrests, or interrogations. Martial law was terminated by presidential decree when a Japanese invasion was no longer considered a threat. National use of martial law. The only national use of martial law was enacted by President Lincoln in response to the Civil War. Proclamation 94 decreed application of martial law to, quote, all rebels and insurgents, their aiders and abettors within the United States, and all persons discouraging volunteer enlistments, resisting militia draft, or guilty of any disloyal practice affording aid and comfort to rebels against the authority of the United States. An estimated 14,000 individuals were arrested and 300 newspapers were shut down. At the time, there was considerable hostility to Lincoln's actions. Judges and the media were especially strong opponents. However, Lincoln ultimately succeeded to end the Civil War, restored order, and abolished slavery. These are some major instances of the use of martial law that can be considered worthy of attention. Living under martial law is not ideal, but as you can see, in the US, most of the time things ended up well. What type of events do you think would require a declaration of martial law? Please leave your opinions in the comments section below.